My name is Oliver, I'm 57, and I own a garage. Not just any garage, but one I built from the ground up with my own two hands. Every corner of it, every tool on the wall, every crack in the concrete floor represents my sweat, my sacrifice, and my unwavering determination. My story began when I was barely 17 years old, working my very first job in auto repair. I was just a young apprentice back then, eager and hungry, learning everything I possibly could from my uncle, who ran a small shop on the outskirts of town. Those early years were formative. I'd arrive before sunrise and leave long after sunset, my hands perpetually stained with grease and oil. My uncle was a hard man, tough but fair, and he taught me that honest work and integrity meant more than quick profits. For 8 long, grueling years, I saved every single penny I earned. I lived in a cramped studio apartment with second-hand furniture, ate simple meals, and never indulged in luxuries. My friends from high school would invite me out, but I'd decline, knowing that every dollar spent was a dollar further from my dream. Finally, at 26, I had enough to open my own place. It was small, just a single bay with basic equipment, but it was mine. The early days were absolutely brutal. I worked non-stop, often staying until well past midnight just to keep the doors open and the bills paid. There were weeks when I wasn't sure I'd make it, but slowly, painfully, my hard work began to pay off. Word spread about the quality of my work, my fair pricing, and my honest assessments. Over the decades, that tiny one-bay shop grew into a thriving, successful business with 5 bays, 3 full-time mechanics working under me, and a reputation that stretched across 3 counties. Even now, 30 years later, I'm incredibly proud of what I built. But my life wasn't only about work and engines and oil changes. I had love too. Her name was Eva. We met at an auto show on a rainy Saturday afternoon, while she was still in college, studying pre-law. I was there checking out some new diagnostic equipment, and she was wandering the exhibits with a friend. Our eyes met across a crowded aisle, and when we started talking, our conversation flowed so naturally, almost like we'd known each other forever. She asked intelligent questions about the cars, genuinely curious, and I found myself opening up in ways I rarely did with strangers. Something just clicked between us that day. Before we parted, we exchanged numbers and promised to stay in touch. We lived in different cities. She was 3 hours away at university, so our relationship started through long, late-night phone calls. We'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. She'd tell me about her classes, her dreams of becoming a lawyer, and I'd share stories from the garage, the difficult customers, the satisfying repairs. Months later, during her spring break, she visited me, and that week-long trip confirmed everything we'd both been feeling. What we had was real, deep, and worth fighting for. We made it official that week, standing on my porch under the stars, and I knew in my bones that she was special. Then tragedy struck her life with devastating force. Both her parents passed away suddenly in a car accident during her junior year, and overnight she lost not just her family, but also the financial support she desperately needed to finish school. The insurance payout barely covered the funeral expenses and outstanding debts. She was completely lost, talking about dropping out, about giving up on her dreams. Without hesitating for even a second, I paid for her remaining tuition out of my savings, nearly $40,000 that I'd been setting aside to expand the garage. When I told her, she broke down crying right there in my living room and hugged me like her life depended on it, her whole body shaking with sobs. In that moment, with her clinging to me and whispering thank you over and over, I knew without any doubt that she was the woman I wanted to build a life with. I'd have given her everything I had if she needed it. 5 years later, after we'd been dating long distance and visiting whenever we could, she moved in with me. After earning her law degree, graduating near the top of her class, I might add, she found a job at a respectable local firm specializing in family law. Life felt absolutely perfect. We fell into comfortable routines. On weekends, we'd hike together through the mountains and enjoy nature, breathing fresh air and leaving the stress of the week behind us. And on one of those hikes, on a hill overlooking the entire city, with the sun setting behind us in brilliant oranges and purples, she surprised me completely by getting down on one knee, pulling out a simple silver ring, and asking me to marry her. I'm rarely speechless, but she caught me completely off guard. My throat tightened, my eyes stung, and all I could do was nod before finally croaking out yes. She slipped the ring on my finger with trembling hands, and said with that beautiful grin I'd fallen in love with, "From now on, you're mine forever, Oliver. No take-backs." 3 weeks later, We had an intimate wedding at a small chapel with just close friends and family. It was simple, unpretentious, and perfect. Over the years that followed, we had 2 children, Maria, now 19, and James, 18. Maria inherited her mother's sharp mind and is currently in college studying political science. James got my creative side and plays lead guitar in a local rock band that's actually starting to get some attention. With the kids growing up and starting their own journeys into adulthood, I felt genuinely content with my life. I'd built a successful business from nothing, raised 2 amazing kids who were finding their paths, and supported my wife through everything: her career challenges, her grief, her ambitions. I never went to college myself, and some people saw me as rough around the edges, unsophisticated, just a simple mechanic with grease under his nails. But that never bothered me. I knew exactly who I was and what I'd accomplished, and I didn't need external validation. And then everything fell apart like an engine block dropped from a crane. After 20 years of marriage, I knew Eva better than anyone in the world. I could read her moods, sense her thoughts, tell when something was bothering her before she even said a word. I could sense when something was off. It started subtly when she accepted a new position at a prestigious downtown law firm, one of those glass tower operations with famous partners and high-profile clients. Suddenly, she worked late almost every single night. She'd come home after 10 p.m., exhausted, distant, barely interested in conversation. Her entire demeanor shifted. The confidence I'd always admired in her changed too, not in the way that made me proud. This version came with arrogance, dismissiveness, a cold superiority that felt foreign. And then there was her boss. His name was Philip. Flashy, charismatic, the type who drove expensive cars, wore designer suits, and loved being the center of attention at every social function. The type who collected expensive watches and talked about them constantly. The moment she first mentioned him at dinner one night, casually, too casually, something deep inside me tightened like a bolt torqued too far. For 3 long, agonizing months, I watched carefully. I listened to her phone calls when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I noted the new perfume, the expensive lingerie that never seemed intended for me, the way she'd angle her phone away when texting. I put the pieces together methodically, the way I'd diagnose a complex engine problem, gathering evidence, testing theories, eliminating possibilities. And eventually, when I couldn't ignore it any longer, I confronted her, something I almost never do because I've always believed in letting people have their space. I didn't raise my voice often in our marriage, but that night, standing in our kitchen at nearly midnight, I did. In less than 20 minutes, she broke down completely and admitted everything. Yes, she'd been sleeping with her boss, Philip, for 4 months. I had prepared myself mentally for that possibility, played out the scenario in my head dozens of times, but nothing can truly numb that kind of pain. It hit me like a physical blow to the chest. I asked her the question I dreaded most. Why, Eva? After everything, why? Her response was cold enough to freeze my blood solid. You're the same man you've always been, Oliver. You never changed, never improved yourself, never grew beyond this garage. You still wear the same old flannel shirts and work boots, still run that garage like it's the only thing you care about in the world. I want more than this. I deserve more. I want someone who commands respect in social circles, someone who makes an impression when he walks into a room, someone people admire and look up to. That's not you. It's never been you. Her words hit harder than any physical blow I'd ever taken in my life. After everything I'd done, paying for her entire law degree when she had nothing, supporting her career through late nights and stress, raising our children largely on my own while she climbed the ladder, giving her stability and unwavering loyalty for 2 decades, she wanted someone with social status and prestige, not loyalty and substance. So you're throwing away 25 years together because I'm not some arrogant show-off in an expensive suit? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't even flinch or show a trace of remorse. Face reality, Oliver. I'm choosing Philip. He's successful, powerful, respected. And you'd better accept it gracefully. If you fight me on this, if you make this difficult, I'll destroy you completely. I'll take everything, the house, the cars, the savings, even your precious garage. My firm handles divorces. I know exactly how to make you suffer. I stared at her for a long moment, not angry anymore, just clear-headed and seeing things with perfect clarity. For the first time in 20 years, I saw her exactly as she was, someone capable of throwing away everything we'd built for superficial status. I smiled, calm, steady, controlled. You can certainly try, I told her quietly. Before she could respond or say another word, I turned and walked away, heading to the guest room where I'd spend the night. The next morning, I left for work before sunrise without saying a word, without even looking at her. The moment the door closed behind me and my truck pulled out of the driveway, she grabbed her phone and called him. "Philip, we have a serious problem. Oliver knows everything." "Damn," he muttered, and I could almost picture him running his hand through his perfectly styled hair. "That complicates things. But it doesn't fundamentally change anything. Stick to the plan we discussed." She told him she'd followed their script exactly, told me I was just a mechanic stuck in the past, that she needed a man who matched her ambition and sophistication. She'd practiced the words, rehearsed the delivery. Philip's voice was encouraging, manipulative. "Good. Stay firm. Don't show weakness or doubt. We'll make sure he has no legal escape, no financial leverage. My lawyers are already preparing." But they had absolutely no idea who they were really dealing with. My patience, my calm demeanor, my quiet nature, it had always been mistaken for weakness by people who didn't truly know me. Meanwhile, Eva kept explaining herself to Philip on the phone, trying to justify wanting more from life. Even through her words, she sounded like she wasn't fully convinced herself, like she was trying to convince herself as much as him. She admitted to him that I didn't even react to her threats the way she'd expected, that I just stood there calmly, that the look in my eyes was disappointment rather than rage. She told Philip she didn't actually want to lose me completely, but she also didn't want to give up her affair, didn't want to go back to her old life. Philip didn't care about her internal conflict. He reminded her in explicit detail of everything intimate she'd told him, everything she liked about being with him, the expensive hotels, the fancy restaurants, the excitement of secrecy. He made it clear he wasn't backing off or giving her space to think. "You'll get used to it," he told her with absolute confidence. "Your husband isn't in charge of your life anymore. I am. I'm the alpha here, Eva. That's what you wanted, remember?" Then he added something that sealed his fate. "Actually, I'll go visit him today. Personal touch. I'll bring all the paperwork. Give me the address to his workshop." "What paperwork?" she asked, suddenly uncertain. "Oh, the usual," he said with audible smugness. "Restraining orders to keep him away from you, me, and your house. Papers to freeze his business accounts while we sort out asset division. Eviction notice giving him 24 hours to vacate the marital home. Preliminary divorce petition. By the time I'm done serving him, he won't have a dime to his name or a roof over his head. He'll be lucky to walk away with the clothes he's wearing." Eva whispered, her voice small. "That seems cruel, Philip." "Cruel," he laughed sharply. "That's just reality, sweetheart. That's how the legal system works when you have the right lawyers." He should have thought about that before marrying above his station. Around 2 p.m. that afternoon, Philip's luxury sedan pulled into my garage parking lot. I was under a truck, finishing up a transmission job, when I heard his expensive shoes clicking on the concrete floor. "Mr. Garcia? Mind if I step in?" he said confidently, his voice echoing in the workspace. I slid out from under the truck slowly, wiping my hands on a rag, and stood to my full height. I'm 6'3" and 230 pounds of working man muscle. Philip was maybe 5'10", slender, gym fit rather than work fit. "I know exactly who you are," I answered, my voice cold as winter steel. "Good," he replied, stepping inside without waiting for permission. "Then we can skip the awkward formalities." He opened his expensive leather briefcase with a theatrical flourish, displaying neat stacks of official-looking documents with tabs and highlighted sections. "Your wife already told you she's choosing me. I'm here to tell you exactly why you're going to accept it without causing problems. I own the firm she works for. I have 20 lawyers on payroll. Half of them specialize exclusively in divorce and asset forfeiture." He spread the papers across my workbench like playing cards in a poker game, pointing to each one. "A signed divorce petition. An emergency order to freeze your business accounts pending investigation. An eviction notice giving you exactly 24 hours to get out of your own home. Restraining orders keeping you 200 meters away from me, Eva, and her residence. And once you're drowning in all this legal paperwork, struggling to hire a lawyer you can't afford, I'll still be in her bed every night." His eyes moved up and down, sizing me up with obvious disdain. "Pretty sure you could." "Bigger than me, stronger too," Philip said with a dismissive wave. "But muscles don't run the world anymore, Garcia. Smart men with law degrees and connections do. So here's the deal. I'll keep seeing Eva whenever I feel like it, and you'll see her only when she's in the mood to let you. That's how it's worked these last 4 months anyway, so why change anything now? Eventually, I'll probably get tired of her, you know how it is, and then she can go crawling back to you if you'll still have her." He leaned in closer, smirking with that unbearable arrogance, apparently thinking he'd already won. "Face the facts here. If you'd been enough for her, we wouldn't be having this conversation at all. Take the loss, Oliver. Use it as motivation to fix yourself, improve. Free life advice. Women want a man who takes control of every situation. I didn't win Eva with cheap charm or sweet words. I won because I took charge, the same way I'm doing right now with you." I felt something shift inside me, like the calm stillness before a devastating storm. "You finished with your speech?" I asked quietly, in a tone that I knew carried far more genuine threat than any amount of shouting ever could. Philip blinked, thrown off balance for the first time in this encounter. "You're like every other fool who thinks being in control means talking down to people," I said slowly, my voice eerily calm. "Let me show you what real resolve looks like." Before he could respond or even process what I'd said, I stepped forward with surprising speed and delivered a single, precise punch to his jaw. It wasn't wild or excessive, just one calculated strike. I'd learned long ago that you don't need multiple hits when one is placed correctly. The impact was immediate. His eyes rolled back slightly, his knees buckled, and he crumpled to the concrete floor, landing hard on his side. He lay there dazed, his expensive suit now covered in dust and oil stains. I stood over him, breathing calmly, my expression unchanged. Philip groaned on the floor, one hand touching his jaw tentatively, trying to process what had just happened. I crouched down beside him, keeping a safe distance but speaking clearly so every word would register. "Listen very carefully, because I'm only going to say this once," I said, my voice measured and controlled. "You came into my workplace thinking you could intimidate me with paperwork and threats. That was your first mistake. Your second was disrespecting me in my own space. But I'm going to give you something you don't deserve, a choice." Philip tried to sit up, wincing, his arrogance completely deflated. It was satisfying to see, I'll admit. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You're going to get up, walk out of here, and never contact Eva again. You're going to end whatever you had with her, completely and permanently. You're going to tear up those papers you brought and forget this meeting ever happened. And if I don't?" Philip managed to croak, though his voice carried none of its earlier confidence. I kept my expression steady. "Then I'll make sure everyone in your professional circle knows exactly what kind of man you are. Every client, every colleague, every judge you've ever worked with. I'll tell them how you pursued a married woman, how you tried to use your position to threaten her husband. Your reputation will be finished. That law degree won't mean much when no one trusts you." I watched his face go pale as the implications sank in. Good. He was finally understanding. "I have friends too, Philip. People who've known me for 30 years. Mechanics, contractors, business owners, the kind of people who actually keep this city running. They talk. Word spreads fast in this town, and once your reputation is damaged in a community like ours, it never fully recovers." I stood up slowly, giving him space to process everything I'd said. "So here are your options," I said, crossing my arms and leaning against my workbench. "Option 1, you walk away right now. You end things with Eva, you leave us alone, and we never cross paths again. You go back to your life, and I go back to mine. This stays between us. Nobody else needs to know what happened here." I paused, letting that sink in. I could see him calculating, weighing his options. "Option 2, you try to fight this. You press charges, you use those papers, you keep seeing my wife. And I promise you, I will make it my personal mission to ensure everyone knows what happened here today and why. Your professional reputation, your career, your standing in the legal community, all of it becomes fair game. I might not have your fancy education, but I know how to make life very, very difficult for someone who wronged me." I walked back over to my workbench casually, as if we were discussing a simple car repair. "I'm not a violent man by nature, Philip. What just happened? That was me showing you I'm serious. That was me keeping it simple. But I'm much more dangerous when I use my head instead of my fists. I've built a business from nothing, raised 2 kids, and earned respect in this community over 3 decades. I know people. I know how things work. And I know exactly which dominoes to push to make everything you've built come crashing down." Philip slowly pushed himself up to a sitting position, his jaw already starting to swell. I could see the fear in his eyes now, replacing that cocky confidence. "So what's it going to be?" I asked calmly, genuinely curious which path he'd choose. "Walk away with your dignity somewhat intact, or push this further and lose everything you've worked for. Your choice, counselor." Philip stared at me, and I could see all the fight had gone from his eyes. The reality of his situation was finally becoming crystal clear to him. Philip carefully got to his feet, unsteady, and gathered his scattered papers with shaking hands. He avoided making eye contact with me, his earlier confidence completely shattered. I'd seen that look before, the look of a man who'd finally realized he'd misjudged a situation entirely. I'll end it, Philip finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. We're done. Eva and I. It's over. Smart choice, I replied evenly. Now take your papers and leave. And Philip, if I ever see you near my family, my business, or my property again, we'll have a very different conversation. One you won't walk away from so easily. Understood? Philip nodded quickly, clutching his briefcase to his chest like a shield, and limped toward the exit. He paused at the doorway, as if wanting to say something, maybe to salvage some dignity, maybe to threaten me back. But he thought better of it. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I watched him go, then let out a long, slow breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. My hand was slightly sore from the punch, but otherwise I felt oddly calm. I'd done what needed to be done, no more, no less. Not the way I'd imagined spending my Tuesday afternoon, but life rarely goes according to plan. I went back to my workbench and got back to work on the transmission I'd been fixing. My hands were steady as I picked up my tools. Later that evening, I learned from a mutual acquaintance that Eva had called Philip, frantic, trying to salvage their plan. According to what I heard, the conversation went about as well as you'd expect. There is no plan, Eva, Philip had told her, his voice flat and defeated. It's over. We're done. I can't see you anymore. She'd apparently been shocked. What? What are you talking about? Your husband paid me a visit today at the garage. He made it very clear what would happen if I continued seeing you. And I believe him. But you said you had lawyers, that you had everything under control. I was wrong, Philip had cut her off. I underestimated him completely. He's not the simple mechanic I thought he was. There are different kinds of power, Eva, and your husband has the kind that actually matters in this town. I'm not throwing away my career over this. So you're just abandoning me? Eva's voice had risen in pitch, panic setting in. I'm protecting myself, Philip had said coldly. And you should do the same. Work things out with your husband or don't, but leave me out of it. Don't call this number again. He'd hung up before she could respond. When I heard about that conversation, I felt a grim satisfaction. Not because I enjoyed Eva's pain. Despite everything, she was still the mother of my children. But because it confirmed what I'd always known. Philip wasn't the alpha he pretended to be. He was just another man who crumbled the moment he faced real consequences. Eva was on her own now, and that's exactly where her choices had led her. Eva's voice cracked with rage and disbelief, calling him pathetic, a coward, a fake alpha who crumbled the moment he faced real consequences. But Philip just closed his swollen eyes, refusing to answer or engage any further. Hours later, stranded on a quiet highway with no money, no gas in her car, and no home to return to, Eva stuck out her thumb to hitchhike, and that's when my old work van rolled to a stop beside her. The moment she saw me behind the wheel, her face drained of all color, going ghost white. I stepped out slowly, deliberately. Get in, I said flatly. We need to talk. She obeyed without a word, climbing into the passenger seat like a condemned prisoner. Here's exactly what's going to happen, I said once I sat down and closed the door. You'll file for divorce within the week. No alimony. No claim to anything I own. Not the house, not the garage, not the savings. What's mine stays mine. What's yours, which is basically nothing, stays yours. You'll return every single piece of jewelry I ever bought you over the years. Put whatever reason you want on the official paperwork. Infidelity, irreconcilable differences, doesn't matter to me. Just get it done quickly. She stared straight ahead through the windshield, silent. You may see the kids, I added after a moment, if and only if they want to see you, and only when I'm not present. I won't stop them from having a relationship with their mother, but I won't participate. I finished with, your belongings are being packed as we speak. Pick them up tomorrow at exactly 10 a.m. If you're late, even by a single minute, I'll burn every last item. Crystal clear? She nodded shakily. 5 days, I said. I want the signed papers in my hands in 5 days maximum. She nodded again, not trusting her voice. The next morning she collected her things, 3 suitcases and some boxes, under my silent supervision. 5 days later, exactly as demanded, the divorce paperwork was on my desk. Irreconcilable differences. I actually laughed out loud when I read that sanitized phrase. Months passed slowly. The final signature came through. And with it, freedom. True, uncomplicated freedom. I'd hoped Eva might understand loyalty one day, might realize what she'd thrown away. She never did. She wanted a man to polish her social image, not a partner to stand beside her through fire and hardship. You don't threaten a man like me. You don't disrespect everything he's built, unless you're fully ready to face the consequences. Now I walk alone, and that's perfectly fine. I've made my peace with it. Apex predators don't travel in packs anyway. They move through the world as they are. One hunter. Unchallenged. Unbroken. The garage is still mine. My kids still call. And I sleep soundly every night, knowing exactly who I am. Thank you for watching the video to the end. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. A playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to is now displayed on the screen. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.